morning, good day, good afternoon, my beautifuls. I hope you're well. I'm excited to bring you another episode of the Self-Care Diaries. I am joined by a formidable, inspiring, loving, kind, fierce woman, friend, lady, goddess, Lenina Rassool. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Lee Joy. You're making me shy. I don't do well with compliments, so just saying up front. And hi to everybody. I'm so happy to be joining.
It's awesome to have you with us. We've been speaking about this for a while, and our diaries were just not marrying, but today I'm grateful that they are and that we can have a chat. So, would you mind sharing with my viewers who is Lenina Rassool?
Okay, so I am Lenina. I've got a history in sort of journalism. I've worked for women's magazines and I've worked in the NGO space for a while. And a couple of years ago, I joined Cape Town TV initially as news editor, and have since launched my own show, which is called The Womxn Show. It broadcasts on Cape Town TV. And the Womxn Show looks at issues around gender-based violence and gender inequality and also women empowerment. I found that media reporting on GBV, I think everything around GBV really, is not taken as seriously or viewed as seriously as it is. Sort of a side issue also from I think a civic engagement perspective. We don't see GBV the same as we see, for instance, issues around water and sanitation or home affairs. But ultimately, the systems, we have wonderful legislation, but the systems that are in place are not working properly. And the Womxn Show was launched to sort of interrogate gender-based violence from that perspective. So I often say the foundation of it is like after we have a large narrative about if you are abused, you should report it. But what happens after you report? Does the system work or doesn't it? And given that we have very low conviction rates for rape and sexual assault and other things, it doesn't seem like it is. And for myself, I am from Cape Town. I am happily divorced. I'm a mother to a 6-year-old. Yeah, that's me, really.
It's as bright as a button. As bright button. I love her. I love that you sent me a picture of what your diary looked, and she had just written this amazing story in your diary of all these different people, and I think she's a deeply creative soul.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. You and I had a chat a couple of weeks back after I'd been interviewed on a local production on the GBV I'd experienced, and you'd spoken about how you were thinking about putting a manual together so that people, when they do speak about their GBV experience, they know how to take care of themselves before and after, and I'm also quite keen to write a blog about it, because I think it is like half the problem of coming forward is how we hear so often how badly women are treated by the cops and by the legal system, and so it just makes, just speaking to a friend about the trauma is difficult, never mind to some random policeman or legal person. So tell me, what value do you bring to the world?
The most difficult question ever. And something I'm trying to, I think, figure out and refine. I know that I have always been able to write. So I'm one of those people that say, I was born with a pen in my hand. All my memories are around like sitting down and sort of writing, and I then eventually became a journalist. But I do say that for most of my life, I think I had been floating. So floating on that string. So I could write well. I went to go study journalism because I could write well, not necessarily because that's what I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to operate in spaces where I was given the opportunity to utilize that talent. So and by that I mean I've often I'm very fortunate. I haven't had to apply for many jobs. My network was wide, and so I would move from Femina to Cosmo to activate and open up, and then Cape Town TV, and they seemed like natural progressions. But when I started the Womxn Show, which was born, really the concept was born out of a personal experience, me personally experiencing the justice system and viewing it from a journalistic lens, understanding that what's happening is just not right, it's not logical, that I didn't have information, and that people need this information. They need women to know that if you go to the police station, that they are not allowed to turn you away. And it really made me interrogate sort of from a civic engagement perspective. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm fascinated by the space between knowing something and doing it. And I say this because Maya Angelou's quote says, when you know better, you do better. But for me, going through the justice system, there was this middle space where even though I knew better, I didn't have information, I found the information, but I was so afraid, and I was so anxious and stressed and unfamiliar with the space that it was difficult for me to do the things that I knew I needed to do. It was difficult. I don't do very well with conflict. So, for instance, I would figure out that what a magistrate said or what someone said was wrong in terms of the law, but it was difficult for me to stand up for myself because I was so afraid. And there are many reasons for that, and I try to, I'm trying to unpack that in my own way. But I try to interrogate this space by seeing what sort of elements and tools and resources would sort of help me overcome that fear to take action. And one of those things was information, was knowing that that I'm right and that this person is wrong, and it's in black and white, and that helps me to, even if I have to squeak it out, I am able to squeak it out. And the other thing is support from other people. Interestingly, people don't like it when I use the word validation. They much prefer affirmation, but I also think there are stages of that. I think that in interrogating the space, in interrogating the way that women and girls, the way we've been raised, speaking out and challenging is something that we have been traditionally discouraged from doing. And so I needed validation from people to say, actually, you're right, before I could sort of take that step. And so I like to think, and so, working my way from there, launching the show, and right now I see the value that I hope to bring to the world and that I hope to be effective in is giving people and giving women the information that they need, and giving them forms of validation through this, in affirming that there are laws, that there are policies, that there's legislation, that there are sort of physical constructs, because the memes are very much about, you must own your power and all of that stuff, but it's very abstract. For me, I work better, and I think women work better when we like things in black and white because we're so unsure of ourselves. Yeah.
Concrete, where we're able to take action, because if it's in an abstract form, then we're not able to take action, and action is really where the power lies, because like Maya Angelou says, if you know better, you do better. So it doesn't just know better if you're not going to do better.
Yeah, and it helps us. Exactly. And I feel like it helps us stand firm in, you were speaking about sort of the reactions to victims of violence by the police, and we know that there's a lot of discouragement. I mean, I interviewed someone the other day who is the founder of an organization called Moms Move for Justice. And what they do is they are women who have children due to gangsterism or other things, and their cases aren't being handled effectively. And we have to push, we have to push, and pushing sometimes means making multiple phone calls to enforce our rights already. And people will say things, police will say things like, you're bothering me, or you're irritating, or I mean, I was also told, you know, you they treat you like a perpetrator because you're phoning too much or whatever. And again, that is similar to the messaging that we had as we were growing up, you know, as children, being silenced, don't speak out. So for me, having that in my hand, knowing that I am right, knowing that this person has a job to do and they need to do it, I think it affirms us and it allows us to, you know, stand our ground at a time when I don't think that we've reached a sort of collective point and a broader point where women are comfortable doing this. We know we're moving into that space. I'm not sure whether it's even gonna like fully manifest in our lifetimes, but those are, and so because of that we need certain tools, I think, to help us stay there.
It's amazing, Lenina. I'm so grateful for what you're doing for women across the country, and I mean globally. We've as a gender we've been muzzled for so many decades, you know, even centuries, and it's so interesting to find one's voice. And I love what you said, like to squeak, if you may. I'm going to quote you in future, because even if you squeak, at least speak one's truth, you know, at least take the courage to speak one's truth. So I really admire the work you're doing, and the Womxn Show is really brilliant, and hopefully one day I can get my ass to Cape Town and we can have a chat, and I can share.
Yes, we have our topics already, don't forget.
So your latest passion project, is that the Womxn Show?
Yes. So I am working on the Womxn Show almost exclusively right now. I am trying to sort of putting things in place to I think build broader platforms. The Womxn Show is broadcast once a week. Obviously, you know, the first show goes out once a week on a Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. and then we have a repeat on Sunday, and we have various other repeats of the older shows. But I think my background is in print, and I've done some work, you know, now that's like sort of the online environment is growing. But I think what I mean is the written word, and I feel like a lot of this information also needs to be sort of curated better. There needs to be platforms where you're curating it, making it more easily findable, and so a space also where the content that's on the show, spaces where it can just live and be more effective. So I'm working around you know, concept notes around that, trying to figure it out. Lockdown has given me some time to do a lot of that, given me time to work on myself, to be able to even think that I am capable of building something like that, because I can say that I've always been terribly afraid. I often say, you know, I wrote a post on Facebook actually the other day, you know, after the Clicks hair debacle, and I was just like, society was not designed for us to actually fit into it. You know, I did an interview with a transport specialist a few years ago, and she was speaking about how the traffic in Cape Town and how the roads were not designed for, the roads were only designed for a very small amount of people, for a tiny part of the population to actually sort of travel on. They never imagined that sort of people of color would be driving into town, much less working there. And for me, that was such an eye-opener to think about that, you know, men built this world with no inkling that women would ever sort of operate within it, be in the workspaces, and do the things that we are doing, and we were excluded from there. But you know, the gist of my Facebook post is that and as I was doing some self-work, my perception is that people who look like me, that's not what I perceive a successful person to look like. or a business owner to look like. And so, and again, it's another, so it's all linked. It's another failing of the media. We don't feature women of color enough. I know, I often say, my daughter, she watches Netflix, and it's still like a huge surprise and a huge win when she's, Mom, there's a brown girl in the show. And I'm like, in 2020, it's still abnormal, it's still different. It's not, we're not seeing sort of equality. And so, that's, on the one hand, that is a barrier that I need to overcome, but on the other hand, it's also the reason why I want to create these spaces and these platforms. So
important, Lenina, so important, because children mirror what they see. And if there are no leaders of women in color, how are young women meant to model themselves to what, and I mean, there've been such amazing stories. I mean, Kamala Harris, so exciting, so exciting. I hope Joe Biden steps aside and says, there we go, young lady, you please go ahead. I'll forget, Lenina, I forget which toy shop it was a couple of years back, and I saw the most beautiful, like way more beautiful than Barbie dolls, but dolls, and I get a bit like choked up just talking about it. These absolutely stunning afro, these bright colored little dolls of children of different color, different skin tones. And I just burst into tears, because I was like, fuck, how comes it taken so long for this to actually hit themselves, number one. But number two, how many little girls are going to be able to nurture, love, and care for and play with something that represents them, and that they had to play with some blonde, little skinny, tight-ass, perky-breasted, strange thing, which for us white kids is weird anyway, and it's fucked up our brains anyway. So but just, it's beautiful to see how things are slowly but surely changing. I agree. I don't think that it's changing at a quick enough pace. I totally agree with you. But I think that's why people like you and I that are passionate about these topics, that's our job, right? To be the loudspeaker, to go and not get in people's faces in an aggressive way, but get in front of as many platforms as possible where girls have a right to show up and to be like don't muzzle us.
Just to be, exactly, with equal value, dearly. And I mean, even there, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember when I was a kid, we didn't want the brown dolls. We didn't want the brown dolls. The brown dolls were the cheap dolls, so there's so many elements, and I can say, my own daughter, and again, I'm doing some work on what it means to be intentional about these things. If I want to change it, am I practicing it? I'm buying her more white dolls because they're more available. And I've recently said also, after the clicks debacle, I said, we need to actually have not just a mental shift, but a financial shift. Those products are harder to source, but we need to put in the effort to source that. This is what is needed to change sort of a culture, to take something mainstream. But just even having this insight now with you, and thinking about the fact that I thought brown dolls had less value, and then looking at how I think that I have less value. It just speaks to sort of how important these things are, how important representation is, and how much work still needs to be done.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it in my culture. I used to live in Sea Point, and I remember going to a birthday party. My lighty was about 4, and there was this group of women that were like besties, and I think, Lenina, there were about 5 of them, but they looked identical. They weren't sisters, they were friends. They had platinum blonde, straight hair. They wore white, crisp button-up shirts with very expensive jeans. I forget, True Religion jeans, and I forget what shoes they were wearing. They weren't high heels, so I didn't take notice because I'm a high heel queen. And I was like, wow, like this is the definition of a successful mother. You know, this is the blonde, slim, booby, you know, like this was what was represented to me as a woman. And I remember like Barbie was blonde, you know, and that's those ideas have been instilled in our brains from young. And I grew up with a Cindy doll. I loved my Cindy doll because she had brown hair, and I'm sure she was cheaper than a Barbie doll, but that didn't matter to me because I had something that felt like that represented who I was. But I'm an orphan, so my like overwhelming need to feel that I fit in and to almost force myself to fit in a way was why I represented so strongly. But still, I mean, you go and read the psychology. Blonde women, blue eyes, get paid better. They get better jobs. If you put them in a room, most men will gravitate towards the blonde women before they go towards any other woman. So it's still, I mean, even in our own culture, in our white culture, there are these biases, you know, and I that instead of pointing fingers at the biases, you and I mean, I haven't got curly hair today, but we can say, hey, you and I are sisters because we got curly hair. You know, like let's flip these biases on their asses, and let's look at our similarities, and let's look at what is the true meaning of a tribe. You know, like I don't get along with my family, and that's okay. Like they do their thing and my thing. But I am surrounded by people like you and, you know, other really powerful, magnetic women doing amazing shit. And hey, I would much rather be in a tribe with you than with people that are my family that don't see my value. So I think that I've been put on this planet, and you might resonate with this as well, with those experiences, so that I can reach across the racial divides and say, hey, come hold my hand. I need this. We need to do this together as women, as men, as a rainbow nation. We need to come together and we need to shift the dial. I recently did a thing on the Feminine Leadership Summit, which was amazing and such fun. And the one thing that came out of hosting the summit, the Feminine Leadership Summit, was that feminine leadership has very little to do with being a woman. Feminine leadership has got to do with embracing both my masculine traits and my feminine traits, and marrying those together and showing up powerfully in this world. Because I know that I have toxic masculine traits within me that I've worked hard to minimize and heal, as well as I've got toxic feminine traits within me. So yeah, I think it's a divine path that you're on, and I know they must be fraught with obstacles and awful slips of people's understandings, you know, their biases, and it can't be an easy road, but it's so necessary, Lenina. I mean, we're creating a legacy for our girls, right, and our boys and our grandchildren, of a country where they can say, on the backs of our parents and our grandparents, they were honest and vulnerable, and they stood up. They got up and they did what needed to be done to shift the dial.
No, exactly. And it's all, you know, the narrative is so important. I mean, we saw this in, the obvious one is #MeToo. You know, and which again comes back to the validation. So we, as I said, you know, we're entering spaces that were not designed for us. I have a theory that because we are in these spaces, there is, you know, they talk about imposter syndrome, and I don't actually like that term, because the notion of imposter is sort of you're aware that you're intentionally doing something that you're not supposed to do, you know, you're fake. So, but it's been sort of commercialized. But for me, it was figuring out, like, why do I feel so wrong in certain spaces? And that's because there is an energy there that, this place wasn't built with me in mind. And just recognizing that. And there's little ways. One night my daughter and I, because we speak a little bit about feminism, a little bit about history. I buy her books. We read Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. Great book, stories of 100 women. And within that context about, for instance, in different countries where women can't drive, and she'll ask why, and etc. So we have those conversations. But one night we walked through the house and she was literally pointing out, she's like, Mom, a man probably made that cupboard, a man probably made that couch, and etc. And and it was just, it brought home, and it's true. What would the world look like if we had contributed? Would the architecture be softer or harder or whatever? I don't know. But just like in the process of recognizing that there's nothing inherently wrong with me, there's nothing inherently wrong with us. There is just, it's the structure or the system that we are sort of inhabiting, has allowed me to deal with this tension, to identify this tension that I feel inside of myself. And to look at it as less threatening, to look at it just as a neutral energy, and then go on to try and sort of create better spaces, create more spaces, try to figure out who we are, because we do not have, like Barbie. I'd suggest everybody watch the movie Misrepresentation, which just shows us what we've been seeing. I think about watching MacGyver when I was young, and he's awesome, right? But even now, as they play reruns, I'm like, oh, the women are just helpless women who look gorgeous. And that was what I grew up watching, and those were my interpretations. And I think it's important for us to start challenging that sort of internally, and then moving to externally, and just coming to the sort of feminine and masculine qualities. I'm also very interested in, I think that we don't really know. I think we are still in the early years of women sort of occupying spaces, and we are trying to find our feet, I think. So this is what's difficult. Unlike the legislation, there's no rule book for us to stand on, so we have to figure it out ourselves. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
No problem.
But I was saying the narrative is so important because, as we've said, the progress that my daughter's still watching a very similar narrative. There have been shifts, but not enough. And so by us telling our stories, and by her hearing these counter narratives as she grows up, one, she'll have a deeper perspective of that and a deeper perspective of a value. But also, two, by creating platforms, and specifically I mean media platforms. If she's going to go and Google, why do I feel so undervalued, or why, random stuff which people do actually Google, she'll be able to come up with resources that she can relate to, be able to come up with tools and other people who feel and think the same way that she does, which right now is not that easily accessible.
So if we look at self-care in the work that you do, or your relationship to self-care, what does self-care mean for you?
I think I said to you before we started that I, traditionally, I have always been a people pleaser. Let me just start there, really, and I had no notions whatsoever of self-care. I don't think I really even thought about it. I would just, bend over backwards to make sure that, other people had their stuff done. And when I was going through stuff where I needed to do self-care, I just didn't. And I think Again, this is for various reasons. I got divorced. A lot of people, a lot of women, when they find themselves in that situation, and especially with children, you just keep going. You go onto some sort of autopilot, and you just do. There were just so many expectations on women, from when you're young, even if in the house compared to like boys. It's only in this year actually. So before, self-care would be, and this is like, a cultural thing. It's like taking a break on the weekend and drinking wine. That's always, women say, I need a break. Let's have some wine. And I come from a culture where that's what people did. We drank on the weekends, Not to say anything about Mitchellstown or Kensington, where I'm from. I'm just saying that was part of the culture. And this year, I remember I was just, I started to realize that there are sort of deeper things that I wanted to cultivate. And I started reading The Artist's Way. And she spoke about morning pages. Now I've had this book for a while. I picked it up. I think I read it before, but I never did any of the stuff. I'm renowned for reading self-help books and doing none of the exercises. So I decided that I wanted to do morning pages, and so from January, and I decided that I wanted to be clear when I'm writing those morning pages. So I didn't decide not to drink. I just decided to have sort of clear-headed mornings. And it was very interesting because all of a sudden I was not drinking, or was doing healthier things, or was going to bed earlier, because I sort of affirmed that I want to be clear in the mornings. And since then, and this was before COVID, but obviously then, COVID hit us in March, lockdown hit us in March. And I started cultivating some other things. I started just being more aware of my body, making some conscious decisions about my life, started looking at stresses differently, because before it was just like all of these 100 things that I need to do right now, and I need to fix it, and I'll just do whatever I can, get through them. But every day waking up feeling like there's still a long list, like I'm not making a dent. And this has been my whole life. So for me now, I'm just going to, because there was a whole process in between. I've written a lot this year. I've filled many journals. I've read a lot of other books. I've done lots of exercises. But over the past 2 months or so, I decided to start doing some Taibo, actually. So I said, okay, 8 minutes with Billy Blanks in the mornings, because my brain can't handle any more of that. So sorry, I'm going to backtrack again. So one of the first things I decided to do was shower every day. And it's taken me, what are we, November? So it's taken me 11 months to actually admit that, because it means that I wasn't showering every day. And I wasn't. I think I wasn't in a good space. I have learned over the years that actually hygiene is my tell for when I am not doing well. And it's very embarrassing. I'm speaking about it now because someone else did a post about it, and hearing someone else speak about it gave me strength to speak about it. So I made the first pact to shower every single day, no matter what. Like, I'm not even going to obsess about the decision for an hour, which I would do sometimes. I would just shower every single day. And I realized in doing that consistently that showering made me feel better. That no matter how much I didn't feel like doing it, when I had a shower, I felt a little bit, even if it's 10% better. So that was great. And then inconsistently doing it, I realized that it had become a bridge for me. So if I woke up and I felt really, really bad, and I felt like I couldn't do anything, even if it's 11, 12 o'clock, and I eventually got myself into the shower, what happened is it became a habit, I'm guessing, where I would consciously know, I can't move out of this like debilitating space. I'm going to go have a shower, and by nature of having that shower, I would know that I'm capable. And the next thing was like, no, I'm not doing long, is the Taibo. Then I started doing that, just 8 minutes every single morning. Doesn't matter what time I get up. It's before I drop. I want to do it before I drop my daughter, but if I do it after I drop it, it's fine. that became the second thing. I'm these things have become like my self-care. I mean, the other night I was feeling so bad, my neck was so tight, and I just said to myself, I pulled out the mat and I did an 8-minute yoga. 8-minute yoga session on back control. I would have never done this before. And so I think it brings us right back to where we were speaking about in the beginning about taking action. I think I've read lots of self-help books, and I really wanted to intellectualize self-care or intellectualize healing. And I read somewhere someone said, you can't read yourself out of depression. I was like, okay. But it's baby steps. It is baby steps. I'm doing them slowly, no pressure on myself, really small things. Yesterday I did a 20-minute timer. I'm so proud of myself. But it's still not consistent. I'm still committed to my 8 minutes because I don't want to put any pressure on myself to, I'm letting it holistically develop. And so I will say this, I feel better. And I feel more capable. And I feel I once asked last year, I remember I asked somebody that I'm close to who had depression and who had overcome depression. And I asked, like, how do you know? How do you trust yourself? How do you know you're going to wake up in the morning and be able to do things? And she said, you develop tools. It starts with trusting yourself. You develop tools, and as you do more things, you realize that you can do more things. And as you build your toolbox, you realize you have these things that you can pull on, even on the days when you wake up and you feel like you can't even get out of bed. And I just, I brushed it off last year, but really, this year, I can say, in November, after 11 months, with certainty that it really does work. And I suggest people try out different things and build their own self-care toolboxes. I mean, this is my own toolbox, and it's not any of the lists that any of those hundreds of self-help books had in there. And by the way, most of the self-help books were written by men also. So I eventually figured out that none of their methods are going to help me. It wasn't designed for a single mother with small kids, pulling on the arm, etc. If you went to sleep at 3 o'clock because your kid is vomiting, there's no way you're going to wake up in the next morning and tell yourself.
No, for sure. No. Nina, I so appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing with us how difficult it is sometimes to take care of ourselves, and I think a big part of acknowledging that is a big part of taking action. Is acknowledging that, and I think that my clients are really brave people, and when they acknowledge things that are really difficult for them and they lean into that discomfort and they show themselves compassion, it's so much, and because then the shame goes away, right? Then they're so much able to show compassion for others. So thank you for sharing so openly. What last thing would you like to leave with our viewers today?
I think I just want to say, what helped for me was taking the pressure off. I think that if you really, really look, that you will find out that a lot of the pressure is sort of been placed upon us. And, I often feel when I'm giving advice, it sounds cliche, but they are cliches for a reason. I think just know yourself. I think I've interviewed many authors. I've spent a year writing. I've always written, but for the first time this year, I've spent a year writing. Oh, and so maybe that's what I want to come to. I read another book called Writing Down the Bones. And even though I've always been a writer, I became a journalist, so I write other people's words. My words that I was writing never looked or sounded the way I thought it was supposed to look and sound. And in one short chapter, she comes up and she says, there are no rules to writing. No rules. And she follows with these silly exercises, look around the room, choose random words, put it together, you have a poem. And that for me also provided a monumental shift when I realized that there are actually no rules. And so there's no rules to self-care. There's no rules for existing in a world that wasn't created for us. We are going out there, create your own rules, create your own regimes, and just trust yourself. Even when you don't trust yourself, just trust that the dots will connect in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's the best advice I can really give, because that's what I'm trying to sort of live now.
Beautiful. And I think just start acknowledging that we have value, and when we give ourselves value, we're able to start putting practices in place that support us. And so disconnecting from what other people want from us. You spoke about being a people pleaser. Me too. I think most empaths, most women, and just it's not about self-care. Isn't about me only or about me first. It's just about me too. Like making space for myself, and that old cliche about I can't pour from an empty cup. So I can't actually be a great mum if I'm not pouring into my own life. I can't be a business owner if I'm not pouring into my own life. I interviewed and I've got clients that are CEOs and men, and it's so interesting for me. Like the one guy, CEO, won awards internationally, doing very well, and I asked him in one of our sessions, so tell me, what's your self-care practice? And he looked at me like, huh? Like what? And I was a bit thrown by it. And then after some research, I realized that men don't think about what is self-care. They just claim, they just do. They get home, kick off their slippers, get the newspaper. I mean, it's such an old cliche. They maybe don't get a newspaper, but a beer, and they put it on the telly, or they, whatever. They have a braai, have some friends. Like, self-care for boys has been instilled in their lives since they were pickaninnies. Like, moms took care of them and showered them and did stuff for them. So self-care isn't really, they went to work, they came home and provided, did what they wanted to, and went to sleep. That's this generation. The men of today are being held a lot more accountable in the parenting role, acknowledging women in the business role, and decisions that are needing to be made across the board. And so self-care is becoming more and more a man and a woman thing. But that was very interesting for me. Lenina, you've got a busy day, so I'm going to love and leave you and let you get to your stuff. I am so grateful for the time that you have spent with us today. I feel like we've done the James Gordon carpool thing. We just didn't hit any songs with you being I appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with us, and I look forward, when I come to Cape Town, I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone. I wish you all the best, and Lejoy, have a wonderful day and week further.
Thank you, honey. To our viewers, thank you for joining us for another fascinating session. We've got our campfire conversations on Tuesday, the 17th of November, and then the third Tuesday in December before the end of the year. So contact me if you'd like the link for that. It's a complimentary session where we'll be talking about everything self-care. So have a beautiful day. God bless you and keep shining. Good day. I hope you're well. So the Self-Care Diaries is everything about self-care. And so today I thought that I'd introduce you to the self-care kit that we've created. But before I do that, I'd like to share a quote with you by Audre Lorde, where she said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." So I think that political warfare in this instance has got to do with fighting with that belief that we're not important, that we've got to put other people first. And often we then pour from an empty cup. So we've created a product that we're very, very excited about, and has been going to the far corners of South Africa. And I thought I'd share it with you today. So it comes in this beautiful organza bag. And there is a journal with a pen. Sorry, the picture's a bit funny. There's a journal with a pen. And then there are 6 cards in this little bag, and the 6 cards relate to the 6 areas of life, being spiritual. I don't know if you're going to be able to read. Spiritual, emotional, psychological, professional, physical, and personal. And there's a card in here that shows you how to use the kit, and then there's a bonus card where you can email me and I will send you your ebook on self-care. So how does this work is that you choose a card out of the 6. So let's say I'm going to choose that one, and today it's a physical card that I've chosen, and there's 1 to 6 prompts on each card, and let's say 3 is mine. And it says, today take some time off and plan a holiday. That is a really awesome idea, and I'm planning a holiday at the end of September. But I think today I could think about what are the kinds of things I could do on that holiday. So that I'll make a note to do today. And so each day you get to choose something new to do. And then you use your beautiful journal here to journal your experience and make your plans and create magic. Like Shukri Tufi said in our one YouTube video, please go check it out. It's really interesting about the power of journaling and how the energy of something changes. He said the energy of something changes when you write it down. The frequency of something changes. And it's so good to get something out of our head and onto paper, because then we get some objectivity and we're able to gain some more self-awareness. So if you'd like to order a self-care kit, please go and look at my website, www.leighjoy.co.za, and that's leighjoy.co.za, and you'll go to the shop and then you'll see the self-care kits there. I'm wishing you a beautiful day.